Well, no, it's okay. We'll trim the recording.
All
But
right, trim it. All right.
what I was thinking we could do for fun is like have like B-roll at the beginning. Like we don't know it's recording, and then I jump into it. I'd like to do
All right.
that. Um,
So we're
I was
going
just
then.
yeah, no, but I had something very funny about what I wanted to say, and then to just jump into it right after that. Like the Bill O'Reilly thing, when he's like he doesn't have the cameras on. Um, I'm just trying to remember what it was. It'll come to me in a second.
I think you just did it.
No, 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 no. That's too cringe. I can't do that.
No, that's what the people want.
Okay, I
You
just
know.
did it
So
right there.
so what
So,
what is good sound? Like what is good sound?
no, I gotta say, hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to the podcast, like that type of thing. No, and at least say what my name is and what your name is, and then we can jump into it.
Okay, let's do it.
All right. Hey guys, welcome to the Good Sound Club podcast, episode number one. I'm your host. My name is Sina. I have with me here today Tom, also known as Gaz. What do you prefer, Tom or Gaz?
I like Tom. I didn't like Tom
Tom?
before, but I'm a big Tom guy now. I'm a
No,
Tom
Tom
boy.
is very good. I like Tom boys. You know that. Okay. This is basically a podcast that, you know what? I don't know. We don't know what it is yet, but it's kind of an experiment. We thought we would jump on, and I wanted to basically see if I could kind of convert some of the ideas or, you know, just thinkings I have on the subject of audio and sound reproduction, um, and just bring them to a wider audience because um, I kind of feel like all this knowledge I have now is kind of pointless if I don't share it with people. And Tom is here to basically help keep me on the straight and narrow and stop me from rambling too much. So I appreciate him joining. So we have a little bit of an agenda, but it's going to be pretty free form for this first episode. So Tom, why don't you start us off? What's the first topic?
So the first topic is what I first discovered thanks to you was what is good sound? You know, to
Sure.
me to me I never quite understood what good sound was. I always heard sound or noise. I'll call it noise for now. And you know, it could be pleasurable, but there does become a point where it becomes good sound. And
Right.
that moment for a lot of people is I feel when they really become involved. Not just, in the equipment or the music, but also so much history
Mm-hmm.
and
Um,
philosophy, and there's so many rabbit holes I feel in good sound that it is often forgotten about or looked over because of marketing. But I wanted to ask you, what is good sound? What does it mean to
sure.
you?
Sure. So I'll start with a little bit more of a, I guess, practical slant, and then we'll gradually descend into the rabbit hole of the abstract. So the whole Good Sound Club thing, I mean, it kind of started as a joke. Essentially, there is a website called Good Sound Club. I better get that out of the way first, actually. We are not affiliated at all with the website called Good Sound Club or the person that runs it or anything like that. Essentially, I started writing articles for this blog. It's actually called Dr. John's Cheap Tube Audio blog. He's kind of been blogging for, I think, well over a decade now. And him and I exchanged some emails, and he just asked me, casually, would you like to write some articles for my blog? So I said, yeah. And he said, okay, great. You're going to need a screen name. My screen name is Dr. John because I'm John and I have a PhD. What's your screen name? So I struggled for a while, and I just thought, okay, what would be a funny screen name that I could choose that it kind of, because I was super getting into vintage audio at the time, and I was dealing with a lot of people overseas, like uh, Eastern Europeans and Asian gentlemen who are just super into the esoteric vintage audio stuff, and kind of like their broken English was making me laugh. So the name I came up with was basically Mr. Good Sound. It doesn't really ring grammatically correct, but it's funny, it's cool, and that kind of became my writing alias. And then when it came time to basically make a hangout group for people who had like-minded interests in audio. I just basically stole the name Good Sound Club. I'll admit to completely plagiarizing that. But to get back to your question, what is good sound? So you gave a pretty good introduction, actually, what it means to you. But what it means to me, it's both a universal and a personal thing. So what do I mean by that? Because those are kind of obviously contradicting statements. Universally, right? People are pretty familiar with the concept of music as a universal language, meaning that you don't have to understand musical notation or anything like that to just be moved by a piece of music, right? It just kind of speaks to you, and it's like looking at a pretty person on the street. You know that they're beautiful, but you don't know why. So just there's a law of attraction there, and I think it's the same thing when we listen to audio equipment, or let's just say a synthesis of audio equipment and music that moves us. This is a universal reaction. And I don't think that audio as a hobby is actually as subjective as most people make it out to be. Of you have different tastes than me, and I have different tastes than you. Most of the time, the taste portion of it comes in ways that people kind of conflate with other things. Like basically, I think choosing a set of compromises doesn't really come down to taste. I think you can have different compromises and still have the same idea of what good sound is, if that makes sense. And that brings me into the personal side of it. So when you basically get in touch with your own perception, and this can be either conscious or subconscious, but for a lot of people it's subconscious until it becomes conscious. Like for you, you just explained that you didn't really understand what it was until it suddenly connected. Um, when people get in touch with their perception of sound, they can suddenly find out what type of components or combination of components or systems that they can put together to kind of have that engagement with music. And that, to me, that's what good sound is essentially. It doesn't have anything to do with um, the pretenses that people put on audio or audio equipment, or showing off or anything like that, or price or brands or anything. It just has to do with basically your experiences, getting in touch with your perception, and finding out what works for you. And that's the personal side of it. But I think that if you can invest yourself into a system, and I mean, a system is really an investment, right? It's a financial investment. It's an investment of your energy to put it together, to get all the components. Um, I think that someone else should be able to listen to it. And this person might have different, quote unquote, taste from you, but they should be able to appreciate essentially what you did. And I think that if they can't, in some cases, it could be just that their own perception is shut off. But I think a lot of times, actually, it's more a fact that you yourself aren't actually happy with the system. And then, the other person's not going to be able to appreciate what you did because it's not a reflection of your true self, if that makes sense. So that's what good sound, I guess, is building a system that reflects who you are in a moment of time. And that's always us as a people, we're always developing. So our systems are always developing, and so is our definition of what's good to us. I hope that encapsulates it. It's a very abstract topic, but that's
Yeah,
just a primer.
I definitely agree that good sound to us does transform not only through our tastes but our lifestyles. Because often I
Yeah,
find people, they want good sounds, but they look for it in the lens of someone else instead of
right.
asking themselves, what fits my lifestyle. They go, what is Summit Fi? What does a billionaire have room for? And how can I reproduce those elements in, my system? And that doesn't really work, I think, for a lot of people. I think a lot of people confuse themselves in trying to, you know, follow the hype train, as a lot of companies definitely are experts in producing these hype trains.
Yeah,
And I don't think you can be satisfied in products that are only designed to be consumable or mass produced. as controversial as that may be, sometimes that's just the way the world works, and you can't always have that. But I do feel there are a lot of people that don't advertise that do produce a lot of great sound, and it really takes some effort to find those. And for me, I think I have enough information to take plunges into things that I may not um you know like to describe, or feel the need to always have to describe something in some arbitrary or like a metaphorical sense, that like, oh, this thing changes, how this mid recess scoop in my system, and it blows this thing out of the water. As Darko likes to make fun of people saying blow out of the water. I think that is funny though. Like, thinking about that, it's like, does everything need to blow everything else out of the water? It doesn't, because everything is so subjective, and especially in speakers, like the room is such a big part. And the room is really, I think, an analogy for a lifestyle. Like, not every
Hmm.
lifestyle can fit like a 1.7 magnipan, or the biggest tectons that they make, that they gotta use a helicopter to deliver to your house. But
Hmm.
I think there are a lot of ways that people can find good sound, and I do think everyone does deserve good sound. I think you wrote a blog post about that once, and that really made me feel good, because that was like one of the best, like, things I've ever read. It's like, it was just after you let me borrow a DAC, and I heard it, and it completely blew me away, because it wasn't like anything I've ever heard, and it was so good, and it fit my lifestyle so well, that I couldn't believe there were things that you could just, not necessarily just buy, right?
Hmm.
But things that you can look for, that you may be oblivious to, because you're looking in the wrong direction,
Right.
right?
And you put it much more eloquently than I did. So just your 2 points. First, yeah, copying other people is never going to get you anywhere for yourself. I mean, a lot of people talk about how they, oh, I don't read reviews, man. All I do is I find people who have the same taste as me, and I look at what they say. And it's like even that, you're fooling yourself if you think that um, by doing that you're somehow making super educated purchasing decisions, because a lot of the times what it is it just boils down to peer pressure, and it makes me, just as a tangent, super duper uncomfortable when
Mm-hmm.
someone buys something because I said I liked it, or I said I bought it. Sometimes I don't even say I like it, I just say I bought it. The next thing I know, someone else bought the same thing. And I mean, that's cool. I understand that, um, you know, I'm not exactly a trendsetter, but I really would like people to understand what it is they're getting themselves into um, before they make that investment. And worst case scenario, yeah, they don't like it and it becomes an experience for them, but it shouldn't be like a negative thing of
Mm-hmm.
uh, you know I wish I didn't get into this, essentially. And people have those thoughts a lot, that kind of that regret. I have it too, and it's just that comes from kind of from copying, I think, rather than thinking individually. And then the second thing you mentioned about lifestyle. So yeah, there's practical lifestyle considerations, of course, your living space and people you live with, considerations like that, how much money you have to spend on this endeavor. But I think of lifestyle these days more like your attitude towards
Mm-hmm.
audio. Like, regardless of your means, what you can afford in terms of space and time and money, what do you want to afford? Like, how much does it actually mean to you to have this? Do you actually need it? Um, these kind of questions, and people don't ask themselves because the answers are very scary. They can be very scary depending on how deep you are. So, uh, that's why kind of some of the biggest paradigm shifts I've had in audio as a hobby didn't actually come from audio at all. It came from other things in my life influencing how I thought about audio, and then that by itself led me down different routes. I'm sure we can get into that more.
Yeah, yeah. Like me personally, I've seen people, buy into the hobby. They can afford practically everything, right, within means. Like
Right.
nothing that's like, you know, they're not gonna buy a $250,000 room or anything, but they definitely got some big bucks, and they definitely want to hear the quote unquote best, and they want to see what
The
that's like.
best.
Yeah, like, like there's some forums that focus on what is the best, right?
Yeah.
And to me, it's really sad seeing someone ultimately be disappointed with something that they bought because I feel it probably didn't fit their lifestyle in the way that they hoped. And there's a lot to ergonomics, I think, in audio. Like,
Hmm.
do you
For
want to
sure.
have 10 boxes? Like, it's cool, but like, do you really want 10 boxes? Do you want to like fiddle with everything? How many stands do you want? Do you want just speaker stands? What about, some racks? And what if there's no remote? Like, can you really deal with having no remote? And it's to me, it's tough, but I totally understand why people can't do it. But me seeing it as an observer, it brought me a lot of insight knowing that it's not just the equipment, but fundamentally it is like it fitting within your lifestyle. And ergonomics are much more important than I originally thought. One time I saw a interview with Herb Reichert, and he was talking about
Hmm.
the turntable, and he was saying how much he loved it because he liked touching it. You know,
The what table? Sorry.
a turntable. I don't know
Oh,
which
it's
one it
okay.
was, but I think it was no, I think it was with Steve, or maybe it was a Stereophile interview with Herb Reichert, and he was just saying
Yeah,
he just loved touching it because it matters. You know, you
it
have to
definitely
touch
does.
it. You have to touch it. You have to like raising the arm, putting the arm down. Maybe you want something automatic. Maybe that's better for some people. And I didn't understand that, but looking back, turntables are definitely not right for a lot of people. Not because it's not the sound that they want, but it's not ergonomic, or it takes up too much space, or it's just not convenient enough. And I personally love it, but it just takes up too much space for me right now. It is definitely something I want, but that's like a long-term thing. And
Hmm.
I've long given up on forcing it into my life, which is very tough. Like,
Yes.
buying a new record is like, to me, is like when that comes in the mail, that is so good. But buying a CD is pretty good too. But I definitely listen to CDs much more than I do records, only because I get this like unrelenting like nervosa with records. It's like, man, I really love this, but I don't have a strain gauge. Like, how much, wear am I going to put on my record by not having, one of the lightest uh, pressures ever put into my groove? And, am I going to still be able to enjoy this in 20 years? But with the CD,
Are your grooves clean enough?
yeah, my groove's clean enough. Like, what happens if I mix and match old and new records, And right now I have my new and old records separated. I think just out of paranoia, like really they should all be together, and like which ones I enjoy the most. But I really enjoy CDs. I gave up CDs, I don't know, when I was 13. As crazy as that is, maybe that's what, 14 years ago. That's crazy to
Hmm.
think about. But like in being with you, you gave me like a sense of like being I'm allowed to enjoy CDs. Like it's okay. It's okay to enjoy CDs. Like usually everyone's like, "Nah, man, you got to stream and you got to download Rune, and that's only $100 a year, and then you got to pay through your streaming service, and that's only another $100 a year. So that's $200, like right out of the gate. Oh, and you need a Raspberry Pi, and it's like okay, and then you need a hat for it, and then you need a USB cleaner, and then you need a power supply, and then let's like, no, dude, I just want to put a CD in, I just want to press play, and I just want to enjoy the music. And that like weight off my shoulders of just actually being able to enjoy music that fits my lifestyle, because the Nervosa is contagious and a lot of
Mm-hmm.
people have it. They may not realize it, or they may not want to accept it. Like you said, like some people definitely don't want to accept some of the truth to their decision making, and they want to force things into their life that probably don't fit. But I think digital and analog both have a place. They fit different lifestyles. Digital can be better for a lot of people,
Mm-hmm.
but if you love music and you enjoy, hearing something for the first time, you can still get that with digital. But I think ultimately they're different. It's a different experience, but I think they both have a place, no matter what you like to listen to.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I just want to stay on the topic for a second of forcing things into your lifestyle because
Yep.
that's like a huge one for me. It's something I've struggled with a lot, and I'm only now after like shit, I don't know, 5, 6 years coming to terms with some things. Like I'm a relatively young guy, right? I'm 26.
Mhm.
And a lot of these people that I look up to, I mean, there are not that many people I look up to, but the people that I do look up to in audio, and I kind of look at them and be like, that's the rig I want. I want that system. I'm going to do it like this. I know everything I have to do. I know everything I have to buy. These guys, they're mostly middle aged. Let's be honest. They've kind of or even retirement age, and they kind of have the time and the space and the money to play with this stuff. And I don't. I have a job. I do have space, but in reality, at this stage of my life, I should be doing other things. I shouldn't be collecting audio equipment and hoarding it. And at one point, it got so bad. I think you know this. I had 8 or 9 turntables
Oh yeah.
just sitting around, and like 2 of them worked, the other 6 were projects. And it was all because I would, get one and be so excited about it and be like, yeah, I'm gonna have a turntable just like person XYZ does, and I'm gonna set it up with this arm and this cartridge. And then by the time I got it in and I kind of planned out everything I wanted to do with it, another one came up for sale. Okay, I need this turntable too, but that's the last one. I swear to God, I'm not buying anymore. And I was just inhaling this copium of, okay, eventually I'll find a place for all of these tables and I'll shoot them out together, and we'll have a shootout and I'll just pick one.
It'll be
Obviously,
epic.
that it'll be epic, and I'll write it up, and everyone will love me for it. But of
You're
course,
gonna
that
get
never
so many likes.
that never happened. And I just realized I gotta sell them. I gotta start selling them. I gotta really think about what I need out of the records that I listen to. And it's tough for me. It's really tough because my records go from an era of the 1910s right up until this current year, although I don't buy many modern records. And if you do only buy modern records, the choice becomes much easier of the type of turntable to buy. But for me, there are certain features that I need. I need to be able to switch between different cartridges, different stylus profiles for different, eras of records. I need to consider mono versus stereo, and that's a whole conversation of itself. So, these are kind of some of the mental gymnastics I played to justify buying all of these things. But in the end, I realized it's not really necessary. Even having two is kind of crazy, but two is kind of the maximum that I could realistically say, okay, if I want to be able to play all of my records without having to unplug shit, I need 2 turntables. So that's what I did. I picked two, and that's what I'm keeping. So in terms of forcing stuff into your lifestyle that doesn't work for you, yeah, that's definitely a big problem. Then in terms of analog versus digital, sorry, I'm not sure, Tom, if you had anything to say about that last rant.
Um, no, I mean, only two turntables. Like that's kind of low. If I'm really inhaling copium here, but like two turntables, like how many phonos? Step up cards. How many cards? Like 8 cards, 10, 16. Like there's
Well, that's
there's
the
too
other,
many
yeah,
variables.
yeah, cartridges. There was this one video I think with Steve Guttenberg did with Pedro, and he said that cartridges are like jewelry from men, and that's so true. Because he had 30, and he had like these little display cases where he sat them up, and there's no way to even listen to that many. But further, they almost all of them were just normal stereo carts, so they didn't even have different purposes in terms of functionality. It was just collecting them. For me, I need one for for my 1950s era monos. I need one for shellac. I need one for stereo. I need one for super early stereo versus late stereo because they also have different, groove widths. So it actually does make sense to have multiple carts, but even then, I'm kind of finding out that all modern cartridges pretty much are overpriced. And it makes way more sense to just buy like 4 or 5, or even just literally one Shure cartridge from the 70s or whatever, and just a bunch of styluses for it, rather than, for the price of one modern cartridge from any big name manufacturer, or Ortofon or whatever, 500, $600 from a dealer to get something actually decent. You can just buy a bunch of Shures, and if you have a removable head shell, swap them in and out. Then you only need one phono stage, and it's just super simple. So that was like a lifestyle thing that I had to teach myself, because I was also collecting vintage cartridges that I didn't need. And that was just another means of basically fitting things into my lifestyle.
Yeah, I definitely want to keep going on about that, about the collectible aspect, but I think we can do that in a different one, because there's a lot of
Sure.
things to collect. There's, if you're a collector and you get the collect bug and you're like, do I want to collect records, CDs, CD players, turntables, cartridges? There's step up transformers. Like, I was looking at
When
some, and there's like an infinite amount that I've never seen, and that itself is like another
Yeah,
revenue.
the guys who mix and match their step up transformers with their cartridges, I mean, that's just crazy to me. Each of these things costs like minimum $300, but they can go up to, infinity money for the step up transformers. And all it is wire wrapped around a magnetic core with some RCA jacks, right? But anyway, to get back to the discussion of digital versus analog. So for me, you can take like the kind of the what's the word for it? The chintzy approach, the kind of people like Darko have, and say, oh, it's all about the music, whatever medium the music's on, that's what I listen to. Yeah, yes and no. Like, yes and no. I think you asked me once about okay, like there was this new album that came out by this rock band, right? And
I
they
remember
had
that.
they released it on CD and vinyl. And you asked me, how would you decide about this, to buy it on CD or vinyl? Well, my personal opinion is that pretty much all modern vinyl pressings are a waste of time and money. That's how I feel. I know other people feel different, but the simplest way I could probably put it is if we just ignore the recording side of it for a minute, because the modern recording industry is kind of fucked. But if we just focus on the playback side, it's really about what type, if we're talking about sound, what type of aesthetic do you want to create? You know,
Mm.
if you put $2,000 into a turntable system, yeah, you can actually get something pretty good these days. Even if you buy all new components, you can get something really good sounding. And likewise with digital, not even $2,000, well under that, you can get. I'm just picking that as an arbitrary number. You can get something really good sounding. And I think some people who are starting to get deep into stuff, they kind of want to ask, what's the point of money where I'm going to get the most investment from this medium versus the other? There's no answer. It all depends on what type of sound aesthetic you want to make. And if you don't know yet, then obviously it's impossible to answer. So the best thing that you can do is buy some cheap stuff that works and actually get some records or get some CDs and kind of go from there. Can they ever be equal? In my eyes, they're absolutely equal. I dedicate as much time to one versus the other. If I had to pick one, what would I choose? I would 100%, 110% choose digital, because I can open youtube.com and get access to a million, billion, bajillion recordings from all eras of recorded sound, and it's all for free. I don't have to pay anything for it, and it sounds pretty good too, or at least it can if you know what you're doing. So, in terms of, I don't know if you'd classify that under convenience. I'd more classify it under breadth of experience, I guess. But I still do collect records. I mean, I have over 1,000 of them. They're not going to go anywhere. I already made a mistake once of selling my entire record collection. I'm never going to repeat that mistake again. I felt sick after I did it, and it was already too late. But um, it goes back to the question of lifestyle, and I try to avoid kind of these cliche lines of thinking of analog is about the ritual or the physical aspect of it. I don't care about that at all. Like whatever. Actually, taking care of records is a big pain in the ass, if we're being honest. But I'm not going to deny that they're cool. They have certain tangibleness to them that give them that intangible quality that people like so much, and why they're willing to spend so much money on them, even when they can get pretty comparable sound quality out of a CD, depending on the recording. So I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
Definitely agree. I mean, yeah, like as you said, I asked you the question, what should I get? Ultimately, I went with your advice and just got the CD. I think, I don't know, I've gotten quite a few CDs since then, and I've really enjoyed them. Some a lot more than others. Some are just like, whoa, this is like incredible. Like, I would feel ashamed to stream some of it because I have the CD. I'm like, man, it sounds so much better on CD. Whether that's true or not, I like to say I believe it. I do believe it, quite in fact, because there's no ads ever when a CD goes into the tray. But
Right.
I love collecting records. There's something about records that they seem more collectible. Maybe it's the artwork, maybe that it's so big, maybe that's so heavy that you can see like records across the room. You're like, oh, that's a record. Like that's
Yeah.
like there's some rare stuff. That's kind of the thing that annoys me right now about modern records is that they're almost to the point where they're designed to be collectible.
Mm-hmm.
Like they're designed to like, oh yeah, we're gonna print this, but there's gonna be 6 colorways, and this one's exclusive to this one website. And you know what happens if you don't buy it today? You're gonna go on Discogs in a year and a half from now, and it's gonna be 3 times the price. Like that's
Yeah.
that bothers me because it's effective. But
Yeah.
I won't forget the times where I did go to record store day. I got there at what, like 5 o'clock in the morning, right? And I went with my brother, and we're like, we're gonna get records. It's gonna be awesome. And the records we got are awesome. Um, but it's not just because what's on the record, but it's about the experience that we had, and that experience is always imprinted onto those records. And to me, that's what makes records so special. I can almost remember every single moment when I first acquired a record. I'm sure a lot of
Right.
people can too. It's like, oh yeah, I got
Yeah, I
this
can.
this
I can.
place. Like I think Michael Fremer, he cuts out like newspaper articles that show the
Mm-hmm.
date. That way every time he picks up the record, he can remember that day and what was the news story that day. Which is pretty cool on my day, but I don't see myself collecting records anytime soon. Um but CDs I definitely enjoy, and I think more people should buy CDs because one, sometimes they're 50 cents, sometimes they're free, sometimes they're a dollar. Rare
Yeah.
ones can be $60. I mean, sometimes you just got to do it if you really want it, but ultimately it has to fit your lifestyle. Not everyone has room for CDs or records, and I totally understand that. But if you collect records to collect them, maybe you should collect some CDs too.
Definitely try it out. Yeah. Um, it's funny you mentioned the imprint. So I have a Throwing Muses record. They're like a college rock band from the late 80s, early 90s. I bought it from a guy in the UK, and he mailed it to me with a letter. This was on Discogs. He mailed it to me with a letter, and it's a super nice letter. I still have it in my drawer somewhere. If I could find it quickly, I'd show you, but maybe another time. It basically read out like, "Hey, great taste. I got to see these guys live in like '89 or whatever in this city in the
Mm,
UK," and he basically signed it, and it was super cool. And then he also included it turns out he was one of these people who believes in like the reptile thing, like the lizard
okay.
people thing, like the really whacked
Yeah.
out and he included one
Yeah.
of those with it, and I kept that too, and I stapled it to the letter. So that was just like an experience of exchanging music with like another human being, that you're not going to get when you open Spotify. Right? um,
Definitely.
and yeah, I definitely do. All of my favorite records are things like that, that they have some sort of story behind them. I purchased them from a guy who maybe bought it back when he used to live in the UK and expatriated here to Canada, where I live now, and he brought all the records with him. And Some of them still have the original price stickers on them. That part's all awesome and good, but um, I think I would keep them even if I didn't have a turntable to play them anymore, just for
Hmm.
that kind of
They're,
physical attachment to the world. Yeah,
they're almost like mementos.
mementos, exactly. That's the word for it. Um, and if you want to kind of get spiritual about it, how do I put this? Um, I guess there is again, I hate to use this cliche of the ritual behind it, but there definitely is some sort of subconscious boost to your perception of music when um, you forgo physical interaction to actually put it on. Um, I don't know if people have done studies on that or what, but I'm sure that everyone listening to this has probably experienced it at one time or another.
Yeah, I still get part of that with the CDs
Yes, definitely,
because you still have
definitely.
to get up and you still have to change it if you want to listen to something else. But I normally just long play stuff. I don't seek tracks or I'm not DJing for anyone. But
Yeah, and we're not anti-streaming, you and I. I think
yeah,
we
definitely
both
not.
we both respect it for what it is. I am sort of a weird outlier in that I use YouTube way more than anything else, and that's partly because, well, it's a couple of reasons. Partly because I love music videos, so I normally, if I'm going to sit down and seriously listen to music, and not put something on just in the background, I want to watch the music video if there is one. So I'll even do some things where like, because normally there's only like two or three music videos for an album if the band's big enough to get the label to finance
Hmm.
that, right? So I'll listen to the songs that don't have music videos, and then when one comes on that does, I'll switch to YouTube and I'll play it there. And I know that sounds retarded, but that's what I do because I like it. It's fun. The visual stimulation for me is a big thing. And then, what else is on YouTube is just the breadth of it. There's so much music on there that's not on any streaming service. Mostly historical recordings. If you're into historical recordings, classical, Spotify, Tidal, and Apple Music are all pretty much useless. Like best case scenario, you'll get something that was completely butchered in a remaster at some professional studio somewhere where they cut off the top end to stop all of the crackles and pops that were in their, um, you know, uh, recording of it. Essentially, their digital transfer, I should say. But on YouTube, that's where there's like thousands of people spending literally hours and hours of their time to archive uh, old recordings of classical and jazz and popular music from all eras, and they do it for free. And they do very good jobs of it too. Some of them even publish the equipment they use in their descriptions. And I basically take time and I make myself playlists and I stuff the music in there and categorize it also. That's why I really like YouTube. From the big three streaming services, what do you use? Spotify, Tidal, Apple.
I use Spotify just because I think it has one of the biggest libraries.
Hmm.
I've tried them all. Uh, Apple Music, I think it's colored in a way that I don't quite enjoy.
The sound, you mean?
Yeah, the sound. It's not really for me. I think they're all colored. I think
Yes.
everything has a certain coloration, and
Yeah.
it's just something you have to live with or be satisfied with. Um, and there's so many other variables involved too. But I personally choose Spotify. It just works. I mean, it works like people wish Rune did. I can just zap music onto devices if I want to. I mean, not that it's hi-fi or anything, but to me that's where CDs come in, right? Like if I want that deeper like physical experience, CDs, yeah, Spotify, and then YouTube. There's a lot of YouTube, but if I'm really being honest, most of my music discovery comes from Bandcamp.
Hmm.
That's where I go for the leading edge, or there'll be a label that has like some weird esoteric kind of music from you know like what is that one Analog Africa, I think that's a label on Bandcamp. They have
Okay.
amazing like recordings that I can't stream, and it's kind of what I'm into. There's a few Japanese labels and all kinds of labels, but Bandcamp for leading edge stuff. and usually Spotify if I'm, if it's a background thing. But if I want a live performance, I tend to go to YouTube. I know Tidal has live performances too,
Oh yes, the
but
live performance. Yeah.
yeah, they're like the music video type stuff. But yeah, I'm gonna change my answer to Bandcamp. I think Bandcamp. I love Bandcamp.
I don't actually have a Bandcamp account. So how do you do it? You do it by label, or how does it have a recommendation engine? How does it work?
So you can like an artist, and you
Mm,
can like their label that they're on, and you can get
mm.
emails. And some usually I get an email. It's like this is back on CD, and then I'll be like, oh, I wonder what this is. Like International Anthem, I think is one. I
Okay,
think
yeah,
I
I
think
have
you
seen
listen
that
to a
one.
lot of their stuff. Yeah, yeah,
Yes.
they're
So
one. And I just progressively like either buy music because you can either get a CD and you get lossless files, or if you buy a
right,
record, you get lossless files with it. And that to me
and
is like
you can
the
still stream
ultimate.
it.
And you can still stream it if you want to. And you download it and you can put it in your player. You can throw it in Rune if you want. But yeah, getting that
Okay.
digital transfer of a record is a pretty big deal. There's other labels that do that too, but I like how Bandcamp does it.
So getting back to this subject, this streaming services being colored, I think it's funny that in the middle of this year, I guess there was this huge controversy about Tidal and MQA, and I guess it was actually a big enough deal for them to like it caused enough of this of a PR thing for them. They had to change their subscription plans and how they advertise them, right? But that was just such like I understand the anti-consumer and the DRM portions of it, but there were certain
Hmm.
people in certain communities who were very obsessed with what it was doing to the bit perfect signal of the sound. And I mean, that's such a huge like misconception because all three of the big streaming services apply their own sound processing or DSP or whatever you want to call it. Some of it has to actually do with the player application, that you're using, whether it's on your phone or it's on your computer or whatever, that has its own coding and it works like like an audio player, an audio streamer, and it colors the sound in its own way. Some of it has to do with actually executive decisions that have been made between the labels and these streaming services to basically remaster is not really the right word, but they make it sound different. I don't really know how else to explain it. It's only certain albums. Like if you look up something obscure, that won't be the case. But if you look up a new release by a big name artist, I think Apple calls them like Apple Masters or something. And I'm pretty sure that Tidal has its own thing. Well, I think they copied Apple with the Tidal Masters thing. But anyway, they're not really remasters. It's not really appropriate to say that, but it is processed in some way. And if you're someone listening and you don't believe this, here's an experiment for you. You can look up any song on YouTube, look up a song that you like and listen to it there. And then go sign up for a free trial of YouTube Music, which is their streaming service. It has the exact same library as YouTube, but it's a different player. It's a different player engine. It still runs in the browser, but it's called YouTube Music. Listen to the same song, listen to it on your system, and see if you can hear a difference. My money is that you probably will, and YouTube Music sounds like 10 times worse than normal YouTube player. And I have no idea why, but it does. And Tidal and Spotify and Apple Music all basically do the same thing in different ways. And it's really annoying. And then the people who are obsessed with Rune, that's another thing I don't understand because Rune is probably the most, um, well, people call it feature rich. What they call feature rich, I call bloated music playback software that there is, and it's like another layer of sound coloration on top of it. So you have whatever's coming from Apple or Tidal being processed, and then Rune goes on top of that. Basically, what you're listening to at the end, it doesn't sound like the CD at all in terms of the master that's on there. It's very strange. Um, I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, or if you've experienced that yourself.
I have. I think, like I said earlier, I think they'll have some sort of coloration. I think it's to, beautify, feel like the music beautiful some way,
Yeah,
make it more appealing to their audience. If title just sounds awesome to you, I mean that's awesome. But I do believe that it is a way to maintain subscribers or to monetize their platform for not just not just for you. Labels, this is like or people would be more interested in having maybe exclusive content with creator
Yeah.
over the other for the streaming platforms. And to me, at the end of the day, it's just, pick your favorite color. I personally like green. Some days I like purple, and it's really up to you. It's really up to you at the end of the day.
And I think on the subject of beautifying, I think Apple actually does the best job of it because when you listen to Apple Music on Apple devices, whether it's AirPods or honestly, I just got one of the new MacBook Pros that has the fancy speakers in it. It sounds different. And I'm not sure what it is that they do. I might even I have a hunch that Apple Music, when it's run natively on iOS or macOS, it knows that you're listening to AirPods, and so it plays something different. That's what I feel. But whatever it is, it seems to work because it can, for certain recordings, make it sound more interesting. For other recordings, it sounds kind of off and can be annoying. Not really sure what to do about it because it is by far the best experience if you're on an Apple device, but yeah, you're kind of stuck with it. There's no way to turn it off, essentially.
Probably just 1 or 2 dB here and there.
I don't even know if it's an EQ. I mean, it does sound like it's been EQ'd, but um, it almost goes beyond that. Like, I know that they advertise spatial audio as like this thing, and even if you have it off, it still makes the recording sound more spatial than it is on the CD. And again, whether that's a good or bad thing depends on your perception. But for me, I kind of just like an honest, plain Jane sound. It can bother me a lot if I notice it. If it's just in the background and I don't notice it, then it's perfectly fine. And I guess a lot of the times that's what streaming is. But I think for the average consumer, um, for sure, what they've done is make it sound more impressive upfront than the other streaming services, and that's important if you're going to make people switch on the basis of sound quality.
Yeah, I definitely agree. It's one of the big things, and it's all about your enjoyment at the end of the day.
Yeah, and
Now,
speaking of enjoyment, let's segue. I have a book here. It's called The Power of Myth. This is basically a transcription between Joseph Campbell. He was a professor in the field of mythology, and Bill Moyers. They had a six-part interview series together on PBS. Bill Moyers was a journalist. There are some quotes in this book. It's a really interesting book, and it's not a difficult read. So if anyone has time to do some reading over winter holidays, buy it. But there's some quotations in here from Joseph Campbell that I think can be extrapolated, even though they're about mythology and life. They can be extrapolated to the field of audio. So there's just two of them I'd like to share and we can discuss. So this first one is the context is about poets and literary men. So this is what Joseph Campbell says. The writer must be true to truth. And that's a killer because the only way you can describe a human being truly is by describing his imperfections. The perfect human being is uninteresting. It's the imperfections of life that are lovable. And when the writer sends a dart of the true word, it hurts, but it goes with love. This is what man called erotic irony, the love for that which you are killing with your cruel analytical word. So, when we're talking about writing truth in audio, I guess the first thing that might come to mind are audio reviewers, whether they be amateurs or the writers for the big mags. The only person that's prolific that I could say writes like what Joseph Campbell just described, being true to truth and being able to describe imperfections, but in a way that's not necessarily damning, but might actually make you more interested in a product. The only writer that was really successful at that, I think, is Art Dudley of Stereophile. In his listener column, you could tell, when he didn't really like a product that had been sent to him to review. He did still have like a reviewer's tongue in that he would not necessarily want to bash things, but when there was something that he knew had appeal broader than his own taste, he was able to translate that in a very subtle way. I mean, you could do it in an overt way by saying, this is not good for me, but it might be good for you. But he didn't say that. He basically, in a very poetic sense, was able to make the imperfections, whatever the component was, interesting to the reader. I don't know if you're like if you've read a lot of arts reviews or if that speaks
I
to
read a
you.
few of his reviews. I read some turntable reviews and like reviewed Elenco, but the most interesting one I've read was about it was so strange. It was like this vintage Altec speaker,
Right.
and the introduction was like a couple arguing. I was like, "What's going on?" It
Right.
was a story, you know. It was interesting in a way that you don't expect an audio review to be. You know, it's not just wow, this is good, but it was like it was a story, almost like how we spoke about records, right? There was like
Hmm.
this imprint of someone's experience in life within the product, and that's what he was describing. That's what
Right.
I've read.
Yeah, well, it's good that you read that one because the Valencias, if you've ever heard them, they're very imperfect speakers. You know, they kind of have a screwed up frequency response. Um, they tend to, as most compression drivers inside of metal horns do, accentuate certain details of music that are not really, it's not really honest, but it can still be very interesting. And that's what he really communicated. I mean, he was very blunt about the fact that these are not neutral, quote unquote, hi-fi speakers, but he was very good at explaining why they became interesting. And after that article was published, I think that the price of Valencia's, at least the A's that he had, have steadily gone up, and now they're overinflated based on what they're worth. But a lot of vintage gear is like that, and it's not just because of art. But anyway, glad that you got to read that article. And if you guys who are listening haven't, look it up. It's online. It's on Stereophile. You can just Google Art Dudley Valencia. It's a very good read if you don't care about speakers. Okay, second quote, and this one's a little bit more profound, maybe a little bit heady. People say that what we're all seeking is a meaning for life. I don't think that's what we're really seeking. I think that what we're seeking is an experience of being alive, so that our life experiences on the purely physical plane will have resonances within our own innermost being and reality, so that we actually feel the rapture of being alive. That's what it's all finally about, and that's what these clues help us to find within ourselves. Not just that quote, actually, there's a companion one. I'm going to read this one as well. We're so engaged in doing things to achieve purposes of outer value that we forget that the inner value, the rapture that's associated with being alive, is what it's all about. So, how do we map that to audio? So, he mentions three things: outer value, inner value, and the rapture that's associated with being alive. So, the third part is where I'll start. So, that's pretty obvious. The rapture associated with being alive, that's when you're listening to your favorite artist, or it could even be new music, and you're enraptured with it. And it doesn't necessarily have anything to do with the equipment that you're running. For instance, I recently, like about a month or two ago, bought AirPods Pros, and I just bought them for running or working out because they're just super convenient if you own an iPhone, right? And when I first got them, they sounded okay, kind of plastic, kind of rolled off on the frequency extremes, but they were okay. They were okay for running. Um, a couple weeks ago, I was at a meditation retreat, and I basically spent 3 days and 3 nights in a cabin in the middle of the woods, very far away from civilization. And the only way that I could listen to music was with these AirPods, right? And one night I was just laying awake. It was like 1 a.m. I couldn't sleep because it wasn't my own bed, and I was listening to some artists that I really like on these AirPods, and all of a sudden, I didn't hear that plastic coloration. I didn't hear the any imperfections of the frequency response. I just heard like really, really clear and piercing music, and that to me was the rapture that's associated with being alive. The other two parts, the outer and the inner value, we've kind of already touched on in the previous conversations. Outer value is kind of all of these pretenses that people put on equipment or fitting in or wanting to have what everyone else has. Um, Meaningless arguments about digital versus analog or which streaming service is best, or basically audio science dogma, anything that you can think of that doesn't really have any sort of real value, and yet people spend so much time and energy engaging with it. So he kind of very succinctly describes that as outer value. And then inner value is what you touched on, Tom, about finding components or set of components that fit within your lifestyle, and being able to use them to engage with music in such a way that it raptures you. So we've kind of been rambling a lot, but that very short quote, I think, very eloquently puts what we're trying to say when we talk about good sound.
Yeah, definitely agree. I mean, there's a lot of things one can argue about, debate, shitpost about in audio. You know, like so much of it actually doesn't matter at all.
Yeah.
There's so much nuance or the minutia of audio in general that you can get lost in describing like the smallest fraction of the experience, and I find a lot of people get lost in that. And me, I did psych for a long time and counseling work.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely enjoy that aspect of people. You know, you're seeing the full throttle, unashamed um, self criticism or community criticism, or just how communities interact with one another. I think that is entertaining to me about
The
audio. That's
human
one
the human
aspect.
element of
The
it.
human element. Yeah, the human
Yeah.
element. But for me, I definitely look for the inner, and the inner to me is definitely what makes the good sound. It's something that can be shared, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I can be locked up, in a corner listening to headphones, but that's not like a communal experience. And that's I want people to have an experience, not so much me have like a self enjoyment or you know uh, pleasure myself with audio. There's more to that. Like live sound is it's like a full body experience, and sometimes people want
Mm-hmm.
that in their home. Don't blame
Mm-hmm.
them, but
It's really
we can't.
difficult.
It's near impossible. It's near impossible. Maybe if I have Wilson's and I sit in a chair that's dead in the middle and I don't move, maybe I'll get that experience. But it's when the music makes you like dance and want to get up. That's
Physical
like the
reactions.
rapture. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
it. And I wanted to go into, an album I've been listening to. Let's
Okay.
see. Can I gotta look at myself. I don't know. Just gonna go like this. I don't know if you can see that. This Rachel's album.
Oh yes. Okay. Well, I know what it is. So just give people the title, and we can maybe put it in the video description.
It's Rachel's music for Egon Schiele. I
Yes.
looked him up. I think he had a different middle name, but it's not on there for obvious reasons if you look him up. And he was a painter, and he was great. And they kind of dedicated this album to him. It's whoa, like if you love double bass and piano, like this album would just like blow you away. I say that blow you away as mostly as a joke, but I love it. Like it's not for everyone, but it's you feel the artist, not just the musicians, but the artist it's dedicated to. And if you look at his art when you listen to this album, you'd be like, whoa, like that's um the cover is a painting I had called Autumn Leaves, and there's a bunch of like paintings inside that he did long ago, and I don't know, maybe they got
Okay.
rights
So
to it.
cool.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
and it's all paper, and yeah, some of these are not safe for work, so I'm just not gonna show all of them.
Okay.
But he definitely he has a sense or a vibe, and I definitely love that album for the sense and the vibe. It's not quite despair or agony, but it is. I don't know. I just it is something I enjoy. It is something I enjoy. I like working to it, and it makes me feel good for some strange reason. What about you? Do you have
So
any albums?
yeah, but just before I get to that, so the music for people who are interested, Rachel's, it's like kind of contemporary classical, right? Chamber, I guess, contemporary chamber music.
Mhm.
They're using string instruments, and a very interesting backstory. The members of that band, or at least some of them, I don't remember if it was all of them or some of them, used to be in a grunge band called Rodan, which is just very prototypical mid '90s post Nirvana grunge music, very aggressive, very loud. And this is kind of like the complete opposite of that, the Rachel's record.
Yeah.
And it's also very beautifully produced. So, if you want music to show off your system, there you go. Again, that's Rachel's music for Egon Schiele, and we'll put a link to that in the notes. Yeah, for me, it's kind of cliche for me to mention this if you know me, but Courtney Barnett is currently my favorite person in the world, my favorite music artist, and she just put out a new album at the end of November. It's called "Things Take Time, Take Time." And there's just some times in life where, um, certain artists or musical work really speaks to what's going on in your own life. And it's even more rare when it's a new release. A lot of the times people find connections with older releases, like shit, think of how many people like listening to Beatles or whatever when they're depressed or something. But
Mhm.
this Courtney Barnett album, just right around the time that it came out, all the themes in it essentially speak exactly to what's going on in my life, which is it was kind of spooky actually, but it does make me super happy. It's a pretty upbeat album, um, really glossy and slick production, not overproduced, and just the themes are very contemporary, I guess, to what's going on in the world right now without spoiling it. So um, do check it out if you like pop music, pop rock music. It's a new release, and that's Courtney Barnett. So, Tom, any closing words? I guess we shouldn't keep going too long. People lose attention.
Yeah, I just wanted to end with don't sell everything you own.
Yeah.
And yeah, yeah, you don't have to hear a difference in everything you try. I think that's the biggest thing I've learned. It's like you don't have to hear a difference in everything you try, but if you want to keep listening, keep listening.
Okay. Don't downsize so hard that there's nothing left to downsize with. Basically, yeah.
Yeah, don't sell
Um,
your everything you own. Yeah,
um, okay. Not
enjoy
sure
what
if
you
I
have.
have any closing statement that can top that. Yeah, enjoy what you have. That's very righteous. Okay, that was a pretty good first episode, I think. Um, Considering I'm new to this, I think you've maybe done one or two podcasts before, right? You have some experience.
Yeah, a few. I mean, a few. Yeah.
All right, we'll get better at it for sure. If you've made it this far, thank you for listening. And if you have any suggestions or feedback, please let us know. I'm sure that um, I'm going to read every comment that there is on the video, so we'll see how that goes.
All two of them.
All two of them. All right. Thank you guys. We're checking out.
Thank you.